Hi everybody, welcome back to Drinks and Dragons. I want to talk to you about how to play Dungeons and Dragons. Now here's my perspective. I used to play probably 3 decades ago and just started back in October, or actually September if I'm honest. And so it's only been a few months, and so it's still sort of fresh with me. So I think I might be able to give you a somewhat unique perspective as someone who is picking the game back up almost brand new. And the other interesting component of this is because I started with a group of newbies such as myself, and since I bought the starter set, I also had to DM it. So I'm starting as a new DM, and I'm playing in a separate game with some people that are quite a bit more experienced than me as a player character. So I've got a perspective from a player character, a perspective from a dungeon master, and the perspective of somebody coming in from Nowheresville to just learn the game again. So with that, join me and we're going to talk about how to play Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm going to be drinking my last Imperial Helles Lager, my Krampus beer from Christmas. This is my Christmas beverage from Southern Tier, and this is what I'll be drinking as we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so welcome back. Time to enjoy a frosty beverage. I'm drinking out of my mason jar tonight, glass. All right. And this is, you guys should be doing the same thing if you're old enough to drink. This is not an endorsement of any kind. These videos are. All right, cheers. The beer is poured. The bottle is empty. If you're old enough to drink, feel free to join me. So again, cheers. Ooh, yeah, that's got a nice bite to it. That is an Imperial Lager on steroids, so be prepared. Sit down when you drink it. Before I go any further, I would like to say to my friend Nate over at WASD20, thanks again for the awesome t-shirt. So Nate had a cool prize that he put together for to celebrate his 20,000 subscriber milestone, and it was a contest where people would submit an adventure hook, and then they judged it, and the second place winner got an absolute tabletop t-shirt. Allow me. Second place, man. Not bad. Not bad at all. Thanks, Nate. Yeah, so when I started back playing D&D again, I was really struggling with trying to understand the mechanics of the game itself. You know, what actually happens in a game of Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, I've seen the books on the shelves. If you go to a hobby store, if you say, hey, where's your D&D stuff? They take you to a bookcase with books on the case. And you're like, okay, well, those are books. How do you play the game? And so I was kind of looking around online for something that explained at a very high level, what is it, you know, and how do you play it? What are the mechanics of it? How does an actual game unfold? You can Google watching people play online. A lot of times it's a lot of banter. It's funny. It's you know, but and entertaining. But you never really, as someone who's trying to learn how to play the game, at least to my, you know, from when I was looking, I couldn't find anything that said, "Hey, Ryan, this is how you play this game." So that's what I'm hoping that I can do with these videos. And so again, shout out to Nate over at WASD20 for his awesome videos that sort of did just that. And I'm hoping I can piggyback on what he's done to help other kind of newbies come into the game. And I think there's a lot of interest out there. And so first and foremost, this is what Dungeons and Dragons is not. It is not a game where you're playing against each other. You're not accumulating points. You're not trying to win at the end of the night, you know. So while it is a game, it is not Battleship or Blackjack or poker. It is a role-playing game. Think about almost like acting or theater, but with rules and boundaries. Do you remember those books when you were a kid that you would read. It's an adventure story, and it says, oh, if you go down the hallway to your left, turn to page 37. If you go down the hallway to your right, turn to page 92. And then you would decide which hallway, flip, 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 flip. Oh, I made my way out. Or, oh no, I just fell into a deep crevasse or whatever. That's kind of like what Dungeons and Dragons is, except for instead of having a book, you've got a dungeon master who sits at kind of the head of the table. He or she is the narrator. They are the sculptors of the game. And they are kind of like the gods over the world within which you live. They can kind of help you decide which way to go. They choose what kind of encounters you might have. They choose how non-player characters react to you. When you walk into a village, you're going to interact with people. Those people, those different characters, are played by the Dungeon Master. Give me 1 second. Somebody wants to join our conversation. So Bella here is the Dungeon Master. She's sitting at the head of the table. And then I am a player character. And so Bella will be the person who is reading the adventure. She has it all in front of her. She knows, who's trying to do what, when, where. And she's also trying to gauge the mood of the group. Is everybody having fun? Do I need to spice it up a little bit? Now, how could you not have fun with this face? I'm not sure. But nonetheless, that is kind of the job of the Dungeon Master. It's a big job. The job of the DM brings a lot to it. You got to have a certain level of preparedness before you even start the game. And so Dungeons and Dragons is not a game where you race to a finish line or accumulate points and try to defeat people. It is a game where you play characters, you role play, and you have adventures along the way. So while there's a DM at the head of the table, there are player characters around the table, each representing their character and playing their character as it is on their sheet. So you have a hill dwarf cleric who is maybe stoic or reserved, or you have a bard who is maybe a Goliath bard who's not the sharpest tool in the shed and maybe making some rash decisions that put the entire group into jeopardy. And that person, by the way, may be super smart in real life, but it's important for them to play the character the way it is on the page, because that is where this dynamic role-playing comes in. And it just makes it so much fun and funny, to be honest. So each player character should invest in their character and kind of even develop their own backstory. Kind of what is this personality like? What is this person or creature, this elf, this dwarf, this halfling rogue, this bard? Are they swashbuckling? Are they reserved? Are they angry about something? What is their character? And then the group dynamic, just let it go and let it unfold. And the more invested the player characters are in the game, the more exciting the game becomes. And so it's the Dungeon Master's job to kind of help move the game along, to play the role of all of those other people or creatures that the player characters interact with, maybe even fight. There's going to be a lot of combat. And this is an adventure story that is never the same adventure twice. It unfolds as you go. And so having said all that, it's still not crystal clear, at least wasn't to me, when I'm looking at a book of Dungeons and Dragons stuff, and I've got all my stuff here, but I'm looking at a book, the player handbook, or the Dungeon Master's Guide, or the Monster Manual. None of that explains in explicit detail the mechanics of the game. How does it actually work? When I sit down at the head of the table as the Dungeon Master, and the player characters sit down around the table, and we're all kind of staring at each other, what do? Got a bunch of dice. Everybody's got their dice. Everybody's got their sheets. Every player has their own player handbook, hopefully. The Dungeon Master will have, I'm looking up here, the Dungeon Master probably doesn't have the Dungeon Master's Guide in front of he or she, but they certainly would have an adventure. And I've already showed you guys the starter set before, which has an adventure inside of it. So they would have that, and maybe there's a map that you're playing with. Maybe there's some dry erase markers. Maybe there's some miniatures that you're playing with. None of those things are required to play the game. The only thing that's required, you need dice, you need a story in a Dungeon Master, you need the rules, you gotta know the rules, and you gotta kind of know what your interactions mean. So, if you're fighting a creature, you kind of have to know how tough it is. What are its weapons? Those types of things. You have to know your own things. What do you have? What are your weapons? How tough are you? How fast are you? Can you dive out of the way? And that depends on a roll of the dice. So there's probability involved. Maybe you duck out of, maybe you're really good at it, but you roll a 1 and you crash and burn. Or maybe you're not that good at something, but you roll a 20 and it's a critical hit. And so everybody gets lucky. There's a game of chance as well as some strategy, as well as a whole lot of fun. So this video is meant to kind of give you that conversation. In the next 2, maybe even 3 videos, what I want to do is maybe shorten the videos a little bit and put a mock game together where I'll play the DM, or maybe Bella will play the DM. Maybe. She'd be a good DM. Maybe Bella will play the DM, or I'll play it. And then I'll also play the role of a player character and kind of bounce back and forth between the two to show you the mechanics of how a game actually works with dice. So stay tuned. I'm looking forward to it. I'll try to post a video about once a week. So subscribe, come back, tell your friends about it. I have a game taking from my buddy Nate's excellent prize giveaway that he did. I'm going to do something similar. I've told you about it in an earlier video. What I'd like to do is when I reach 1,000, Nate hit 20,000. When I hit 1,000, okay, so I've got a little ways to go. I'm about 0.01% of the way there so far. So I've got a little ways to go. But if I hit 1,000 before Dragon Con, I too am going to do a little prize giveaway of some sort. I may just totally copy what he did because it was so awesome. But he gets lots of props from me. And with that, thanks again. We'll see you next time. Oh, cheers.